Good morning, all you beautiful people. I am so glad to be here today, and I'm especially grateful for the music you just gave us. Um, it's a powerful piece you just spoke. I'm especially glad to be back here in this wonderful space with wonderful music and you wonderful people. I'm very honored and pleased to be here with you once again and share our time together. My hope for today is this. You may not believe everything you hear today, but perhaps, just perhaps, you may hear something you already know. Now, I'm jazzed today because I took 2 trips last month in August that were very powerful. One down to the Conference of the Americas in Lake Chapala, Mexico. I was down there. There were 150 people from all over South America, Mexico, and the United States. And let me tell you, your center had one of the largest contingents that were down there. It was, and it was obvious. You're everywhere. Reverend Bonnie, Teresa, other folks whose names I don't remember. It was a very powerful experience. The second trip I took was to Asilomar, which is at just outside of Monterey, California, at a retreat center there that apparently Ernest Holmes enjoyed going to back in the day. And he would go there for 2-week retreats. And when he passed, we started having annual gatherings there that stopped in 2012. So this year was the first time they've had one since 2012. And there were 500 of us that came from all over the world to share that experience there. And it was very powerful. Powerful speakers, powerful messages, powerfully delivered. What I've been telling people is that remember back to that first year when you heard and absorbed Science of Mind, how exciting that was, the energy, the vitality, the love that we felt. I had that at Asilomar all crammed into 48 hours. It was just really powerful. For instance, at one point, Karen Drucker, she was part of the singing, and she started singing a song, and the 500 of us in the room started singing back, and her voice cracked, and she stopped a minute and just listened to us singing that song to her. She was so touched, and that just cracked my heart open as well. What they did there was they took passages from the Sermon by the Sea, which was delivered there at Asilomar and was the last sermon that Ernest Holmes gave at Asilomar, and maybe the last ever. I'm not certain about that. But they took passages from that sermon and gave a passage to each of the speakers and said, okay, let this be the basis of your talk. And it was very powerful. Michelle Medrano used one on the opening night that I found particularly powerful and is one that I would like to start with today. And it was Ernest Holmes, and he said this: find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his soul, and I will find another Savior, another Jesus, another exalted human being. She took that concept and went on to broaden it to take us to a point where, to the end, I'll try and paraphrase it, but it was that most of what we see, all of what we see out in the world, is a neutral event. It's just a flat tire, or it's just whatever, until we see it, experience it, judge it, and say, oh, that's good, that's bad. And that all is a reflection of our inner consciousness, how we evaluate the world. She's the senior minister up at Mile High Church in Denver and was a very powerful speaker, and that just kicked me off the whole rest of the weekend. So what Ernest says is to find one person who's for something and against nothing. So with that in mind, let's talk about stewardship. I've seen 2 different titles about what those CSL centers are talking about across the country today, in this month, Ensure Stewardship of the Planet and Stewardship from the Personal to the Planetary. And they had ministers send little 3 to 5 minute blurbs to home office, and our senior spiritual leader, Ken Gardner, has videos online for each of these Sundays with those topics. And I went and took a look at that because I wasn't quite sure where to start with stewardship. And the first Sunday, the talk was essentially about love. I thought, okay. And the second Sunday was love in action. And the words that he spoke for this particular Sunday could be summarized as transcending fear. And the truth is, none of those really spoke to me very well about stewardship. So I resorted to my source that helps me a lot sometimes, and that's the dictionary. Stewardship. The dictionary says stewardship, the job of supervising or taking care of something such as an organization or church. Now, every time I've ever heard stewardship talked about, it's been about a church. That's what the board does, that's what the minister does, that's what we all do. It's the care and feeding, and how do they put it? Care of something such as an organization or property. Another meaning from Merriam-Webster was the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Careful, responsible management. Now, that spoke to me a little better than taking care of property or an organization. But the one I absolutely loved, and is the basis for what we're going to talk about, what I'm going to talk about today. The responsible overseeing and protection of something considered worth caring for. Overseeing, protection, something worth caring for. Anything worth caring for. So another thing that Michelle Medrano did in that opening talk on Thursday night at Silomar was she read some words from Mary Baker Eddy that touched me deeply. And so I sent off an email to Michelle and said, hey, those words you said from Mary Baker Eddy, will you tell me where to find those? Because I'd really like to have them in use sometime in the future. And she essentially said, no, here they are, and gave them to me instead. And I'd like to share those with you today. It's called I Have Learned a Great Secret, and it goes like this. I have learned a great secret, and I'm going to tell you what it is, and it is wonderful. It is this: not to see or hear or speak any kind of imperfection. It is seeing and hearing and repeating only good at all times, under all circumstances, and in spite of everything that appears to the contrary. I make this resolve every morning when I first open my eyes, and renew it every hour of the day. I see perfection in myself, in my friends, in my so-called enemy. I see it in my affairs and in world affairs. I take my radical stand for the perfection of God and for everything and everybody He has created. I look upon the world with God's eyes and see it just as He sees it, and I refuse to see it in any other way. I stop 12 times a day and renew my resolve and make sure I am not repeating error or giving way to criticism. I'm sorry. That's the cutest little girl I've ever seen. Just sitting there, just listening. That's wonderful. Good morning. Where was I? Giving way to criticism. I watch my thoughts about people, the lame, the old, the unloved. To those I pass in the street, stray animals, I exclude nothing. I have taken my radical stand for perfection, and I will not, absolutely will not relax this perfect standard. The result has been simply marvelous. Try it. You will find that you will be seeing with God's eyes, His perfect sight, and you will behold a perfect universe. The outward condition of our inward thinking. Woo! I love reading that. She is for something and against nothing. So I suggest to you, stewardship is not against anything. It is not removing plastic from the oceans, picking up trash along the highway. It's not filtering the air we breathe and the water we drink. Those things are remediation. I'm not against those things, but I just want to point out they are remediation of a problem that we're against. Stewardship is not throwing trash out the window in the first place, not fouling the ocean with plastic and cans in the first place. Avoid fouling the air and the water that we drink in the first place. It is having kind and loving relationships in the first place? Now notice a lot of these examples we're talking about waste. We can't eliminate waste. Our body creates waste. Most processes we talk about create waste. It's how we deal with that. And stewardship is mindful management of that. The key word is mindfully. And today we're going to expand on the use we have about stewardship, and take a look at how it shows up in our lives. And what I want to point out is that most of us are doing good stewardship most of the time. Think about when you wake up in the morning. When you open your eyes, what do you see? You see walls. Are there pictures on the walls? Is there paint on the walls? Are there holes in the wall? Do you see clothes? Are they folded neatly on a counter or in the drawer? Hanging in a closet, or are they tossed carelessly into a corner? When you go to the bathroom to brush your teeth, is it clean? When you look in the mirror, what do you see? Are you healthy? Are you rested? When you go into the kitchen for your morning coffee or your morning juice, is it clean and neat? Your car, is it safe, clean, in good repair? In your relationships with parents, siblings, children, friends, neighbors, are they in good repair? Or are you struggling against something you have judged in those relationships? My purpose isn't to judge the condition of your home or your car or your face in the mirror, but just to notice that we are mostly good stewards right here, right now. So how do we become planetary stewards? Start with your very own body. Start with your home. Start with every room in your home. Start with your car. Start with your relationships. Remember the words of Ernest Holmes. There is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. When we say that in Science Mind, we're typically talking about prayer. Okay, we are. But also remember that what we know is that every thought, every word, every deed we do is a prayer. So we have this power in the universe that we can use. So use it. Start with the treatment. We call that affirmative prayer, remember? Start with a phone call to somebody that you may not have talked to for a while. Start with using the recyclable plates and bowls and cups that you have in the other room, and not use the paper plates and the disposables, the plastic spoons. One of my favorite talks down at the Conference of the Americas was by Reverend David Bruner, who's the senior minister at San Jose Center in California. He started off with saying, we have enough information. And I'm going, wait a minute, information's good. You know, education, broadening, growth, see and think and talk more deeply about various things. But then he went on and talked and gave an example that really changed my mind about that. And his example was one about a push-up. He said, you can study a push-up up, down, sideways, till the cows come home, and nothing happens. There's no results. You can have in your consciousness the perfect push-up. Nothing happens. But do one push-up, however you muddle through, and something happens, something changes. It may not be exactly what you want because you did it wrong, but something changes. And I really like that. Without the action, it's just knowledge. The point is, we have enough information, so let's put it into action. Do something that reflects, how's it go? Overseeing and protecting something considered worth caring for and preserving. Take an action today that will carefully manage, oversee, and care for the image you saw in the mirror, the condition of each room in your home, the condition of your yard or car. Mow the lawn. Pull some weeds. Address any relationship you have that could use some tender, loving care. This is good stewardship, and it's your opportunity right here, right now, to take action today that reflects overseeing and protecting something worth caring for and preserving. Remember what Ernest says, there's a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. Remember Mary Baker Eddy and her example for us today. I'd like to read it again. And perhaps you'll hear it a little differently than you did before. I have learned a great secret. I'm going to tell you what the secret is, and it is wonderful. It is this: not to see or hear or repeat any kind of imperfection. It is seeing and hearing and repeating good only, at all times, under all circumstances, in spite of everything that appears to the contrary. I make this resolve every morning when I first open my eyes, and I renew it every hour of the day. I see perfection in myself, in my friends, and in my so-called enemy, in my affairs and in world affairs. I take my radical stand for the perfection of God and for everything and everybody He has created. I look upon the world with God's eyes and see it just as He sees it, and I refuse to see it in any other way. I stop a dozen times a day and renew the resolve and make sure I am not repeating error or giving way to criticism. I watch my thoughts about people, the lame, the old, the unloved, and those I pass in the street. Stray animals. I exclude nothing. I have taken my radical stand for perfection, and I will not, absolutely will not, relax this perfect standard. The result is simply marvelous. Try it, and you will find that you will be seeing with God's eyes, His perfect sight, and you will behold a perfect universe, that outward condition of your inward thinking. So, here's my offering for us today. Step into planetary stewardship. Do it today. Take it to your homes. Take it to your relationships. Take it to the streets, people. It seems like it went really fast. I hope I didn't skip a couple of pages. Thank you very much for sharing this time today. Now, please join with me as we have a closing prayer. I invite the practitioners to set the sacred space for us. If you're comfortable, feel free to close your eyes. Now, what I know is that in this sacred place, in this sacred moment, that indeed God is all there is. There is no thought or word or deed that is not God. And since this is true, I know too that Spirit lives in me and in each of you and in Reverend Bonnie and in this very moment. In this very moment, I am in the midst of loving kindness and good stewardship. I declare and affirm that each thought, word, and deed of mine and of yours is stewardship of our own lives and is equally stewardship for the planet. And in doing so, it changes the consciousness of the entire universe. The universe that responds to our prayers, our thoughts, our words, yes, our deeds. I know, too, that each of us here today has within us the urge to be that one person who is for something and against nothing. That we do change the world when we notice that we have enough information and we are ready to take action today, right here, right now. And so with deep gratitude, I honor each of us today, knowing our time together is done, finished, and complete in the mind of God. Knowing that all is well, I invite you to join me as I say, and so it is. Amen.